In this second video, I still want to take my text string and split this based on a transition from a non-text character to a text character, and likewise from a text character to a non-text character. This is my starting text, and this is what I want to end up with, where my text has been split into a list, where each item is then whenever I have a transition. This time I want to create my own function instead of simply using existing splitter functions. In this second solution, I've chosen to have a lot of steps to make it easier to visualize and be more pedagogical, but that isn't necessary. I'm also going to reveal that I will be using a splitter function, but it won't be the split by character transition. And I'm going to make a second version where I don't use this function. I first want to check the length of my text because I want to create a list, and I need that list to be as long as there are characters in my text. So that is called len. And then I actually want to stop before, and that will make sense in a moment. I want to create a list that goes from the value 1 until length -2. Normally lists start from index 0, but I'm starting from 1, and that's why I want to do -2 instead. I actually have 47 characters, but here I have 45 rows. And that's because I don't have to do a split all the way at the end. We're going to compare the current item with the next item and then do a split if there's a transition. I then want to apply a transformation to this list, where I do a list lookup. I want to grab the current character and the next character to then do my comparison. I'll be converting this list into a list of lists, which I could also make it a list of records if I wanted to add a field name, which would be even more pedagogical, but we won't be doing that. I'm going to start out by converting my text into a list because I'm going to do a list lookup. I could also use text.range, but I want to do this with a list because I can buffer a list. Then I can transform this list where I want to say each if the underscore is equal to the length. I first want to handle the last row, otherwise I'm going to get an error. I'm going to say if this is true, then I want to write skip. Otherwise I want to convert my item into a list of lists. And I'm going to start out by actually incrementing my index because I want to do the split after that first item and not before it. Then I want to have a list of lists. So my second item is actually also a list where I want to do a lookup, grabbing the current item and the next item. I'll be doing a lookup into this where I use the current item, which is then the index. And then I also want to grab the next value, which is then index +1. Then we have a list where I have 2 and then I have my list inside. Then I can create my function, which is then going to take 2 inputs, the current character and the next character. And this is going to output a true because I need to do filtering. And here I can create my list of text instead of having that as a step. But you could choose to make that a step if you want. Again, I want to do a buffer. Then I want to split my calculation into multiple steps. I want to say if list contains, meaning if my current text string, which is then the left, if this is a text string, I want to output 1. Otherwise I want to output 0. And likewise, I want to do this for the next character, meaning I can copy this and say instead I check the next, and I can then add these two values together, because this way, if both are text, then it's going to equal 1 + 1, and if neither are text, it's going to be 0 + 0, but if one is text and the other isn't, or one isn't text and the other is, then they're going to output 1, which means I can then do a final comparison, simply checking if total is equal to 1. And if I then go back to my list, I want to extract that last row so we can see it, just to show the problem with the last row. I want to show that it says skip. And actually looking over it, I don't even think we need this check. I'm going to comment it out for now, because it shouldn't be able to be equal to the length because we stopped before. I just want to check this. And then we can turn it back on if there's a problem. Because if I look at the last row, I can see I have the exclamation points and not the skip. I'll try this out and then we can change it after. I can then apply my function by transforming this list. I can then say equal list transform on this list. Actually, I want indentation. And then I can apply my function where I want to output my index or nulls. I can apply func transition. I want to go into the current row, and then I need to extract the second item to grab the left character. And likewise, I want to grab the second character. If this evaluates to true, I want to grab the index position. Otherwise, I want to grab null. And this is because I can remove nulls. And this means that I need to do a split at character 9, 12, 14, 15, and so on. And we can add that as a comment. I can then remove the nulls by using list select to say each. I want to keep those that are numbers. And then we have the positions where I want to split. And actually I also need to add the 0 at the front. Actually we can decide not to do that, and then I'll show how to add that. Lastly, I can use another splitter, which is then split by position, because I now have the indexes to split. This function takes a list of positions, which is then this list, which is indexes to split, and it doesn't give me IntelliSense, so that's nice. Which gives us a function, which I then apply on my text all the way at the start with a capital S. And then we can see here that it does a split at the first index position, which is 9, but then it removes what's on the left, which is why I need to add a 0 at the start of my list, because I need to make a split, so to say, on the left of the first character, and then it can extract what's on the right. So it's a bit confused, but we can then add a 0, and this is just the function being funky. I can add 0 as a list with the ampersand function, which then says add this as a list, which is the same as combining the two lists. And then we apply the function. But I'm not satisfied with having to use this split function, because that's kind of the point of making my own function. And I can do that, actually, make my own splitter function. So instead of leveraging this function, I want to create my own. It means I can copy this and then change the name. I'm going to delete this step, but I'm going to keep the output so we can see what we're going to end up with. And when I then press off, we can compare the outputs because it should be the same. I'm going to start out by saving the positions, which is then actually my step. So add index 0. Then I want to grab my index positions. So actually let me change that name to index to split. Then I need the indexes of my list, my original text, which I call list lookup. This uses the list positions function, which takes the list, and then it's going to give me a list starting from 0 to the last item, which I can use for lookups. And that's actually all the variables I need. I then want to accumulate over my list lookup, which again is my index positions of my list, which means 0 onto the last item. And then my seed is going to be a starting value, which is empty. That needs to be an empty list, because I'm then going to add to this list. And as always, with list accumulate, we call the variable seed, current, which goes towards. If current is equal to the list count of positions minus 1, in other words, it's the last row, then I want to output the seed, which is then the list I've added items to. Then I want to add a list, which is going to use the text range function, because this takes an index position and extracts text. And then I can say source, my text. And I want to do a lookup into the index to split at list. I want to use current. And then if you don't apply a third argument, the text range function is going to go into this index and then grab everything to the right. And that's what I want in this case. Because this means I don't have to do another split basically. And I want to grab everything after the latest split. And if this isn't the case, meaning we're not in the last row, I want the new seed to be equal to its current value and a list, where I also use the text range function, but I use the third argument. I still want to go into source, and I still want to go into positions, current, but my third argument is then going to be how many characters to extract, which is then going to be positions of current plus 1, meaning the next index to split at, and then I want to say minus positions current, and actually I didn't call it my variable positions, I called it index to split at. And this is going to go into current, meaning I want to go into, say, position 9, and then I want to extract how many characters. That would be the next item, which is 14 minus 9, so 5 characters. And if I did everything right, which I didn't, there, yeah. So it's a lot to take in, and if I just split this up a bit, we can start out by seeing what this variable is. It's simply 0 to 13. Because that is how many rows I have here. But instead of having the values, I instead have the index positions, meaning I can very easily do a lookup into this list. And then we can see here, I need to make a cut at character 0 and then grab between characters 0 and 9. And then again, a cut at 9 and grab between 9 and 12 and so on. And that's exactly what happens. We can see here in the last row, I want to go into position 44 and grab everything to the right, which is then the 3 exclamation points. It's a lot to take in, but the important part is that anytime I have a split, meaning anytime I have a new row in this list, I want to create a new row in my list, meaning I iteratively expand this list by adding a new item to it. So